So, as promised, this is the first video in my series on identity politics. The question I'm answering in this video is going to be, what issues will arise in a culture obsessed with identity politics? It's like people are 8 again with label makers getting all excited to type into that machine and print words out to stick onto every single object just because they can. But just because you can label something doesn't mean that you should. Probably not going to hit all of the issues, but I am hoping to hit all of the big ones. If I do miss any, feel free to inform me in the comments section below. A huge problem with labeling people on a whim is that it's more than likely that that label is going to be wrong due to misinformation, or at the very least, contradictory. Take Milo Yiannopoulos, for example. He's gay, he's Jewish on his mother's side, and as I said in the intro video, prefers the company of black men. And by company, I mean it in the sexual sense, not in the business sense. Unless your business is in the sexual sense, then I guess carry on. Because Milo holds certain conservative ideologies, he's been labeled as a racist, as a Nazi, and so on. In the 1940s, the Nazi regime targeted both Jewish and homosexual citizens. And, you know, the cornerstone to being a racist is thinking that your race is better than any other. A white man who sucks off black men at his leisure certainly does not fit that mold. Attacking a person with labels is nothing short of character assassination, and a terrible debate tactic, as you're not actually saying anything of intellectual merit. What you're doing is akin to a bully in a schoolyard calling people names to get a rise.
Shut up, idiot! Moron! Scab eater! Butt sniffer! Puss licker! Fart smeller! You eat dog crap for breakfast, geek! You make your weenies with your mama's toe jam! Yeah! You bob for apples in the toilet! And you like it! You play ball like a girl!
I would have liked to think that adults were above such nonsense. However, such is the case that the chosen names have gone from baby and chicken to Nazi and racist.
What? That would be childish.
While some people find it prudent to attack others with labels, some find it advantageous to slap labels onto themselves, whether it be a WebMD psychological diagnosis, or a gender, or a sexuality, or an ism. This label craze where people label themselves to give them some sort of authority platform on a subject matter is becoming an epidemic of sorts. An epidemic in the debate sense, that is. Because if you have to start your argument off with the phrase, as a blank, or because I blank, I feel, whether that blank be an identifier, or an ism, or a gender, or sexuality, or a skin color, then you are telling the world that you don't believe your argument holds up enough on its own without an emotional prop-up. Facts and figures and statistics should be all you need to be convincing, and the emotional play doesn't necessarily work as well as you would think it should. Because as many times as a woman can say,
as a female in the West, I feel systematically oppressed by the patriarchy.
another woman can come along and say,
As a female in the West, I don't feel systematically oppressed by the patriarchy.
thereby negating the initial woman's argument. Feelings are all subjective and different to each individual person. That is to say, what you feel may not be what another person feels, and thus creates a complete roadblock in the debate, should that be your debate tactic. And then there's the problem with throwing these words around like candy. Doing so to your heart's content diminishes the validity of any claim you're making when you use those words, because, in fact, when you're saying, he's a Nazi, or I'm trans, or I have bipolar disorder, or he's a racist, he's a fascist, you've just labeled something that is meant to represent that entire label to the world, and if that claim is inaccurate, it invalidates that label ever so slightly. Which may not seem like a big deal, but do it often enough, and do it loudly enough, and the label becomes meaningless because it's been so diluted. Take, for example, your least favorite liquid medicine, the stuff that makes you gag the most. 1 teaspoon of pure medicine is the most potent and the most effective. Now say, you water that teaspoon down with a teaspoon of water, and you take a teaspoon of that solution as medicine instead of the original medicine. It's half as much potent and effective. Now do that 100 times, and you are taking a fraction of the original medicine. You are getting a small percentage of the original potency and the effectiveness, and at that point you might as well be drinking water for all the good it'll do you. You'd be better off taking a different medicine altogether. What I'm getting at here is...
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
If every person off the side of the proverbial fence is a Nazi, then no one is. If every person who doesn't conform to traditional gender roles is transgender, then no one does. If every white person is a racist, then none of them are. Because those words are the ones we use to describe outliers in thoughts from the average population. In labeling to the extreme, you are taking away the validity of that word. The original definition becomes meaningless and must then change. On top of that, you have to come up with a new word entirely to describe the behavior that the original word already described. We must be careful with the labels we use, as not only do they become diluted with overuse, they become an identifier for that person. For example, what is the first word you think of when I say the name Charlie Sheen?
How much did you have to drink last night?
Let's see. I don't know.
Drunk or addict or man whore. But I bet you didn't know that since 2006 he's been an active supporter and a major donor for the Aid for AIDS Foundation and has had a hand in various other charitable organizations over the years. Now, what do you think of when I say the word Pope? Probably a role model, or pure, or sinless. But did you know that Pope Pius II wrote an entire erotic novel called The Tale of Two Lovers? Not what you would expect from someone who's aspired to be the most important virgin on the planet. The point I'm trying to make here is that when you're labeling someone, whether it be yourself or someone else, you are essentially limiting them in your own mind as well as the minds of others. When a word is used to describe who a person is to themselves or to the world, it becomes their identity. Or to be metaphorical, it becomes their box. The thing about humanity is that we don't really enjoy being put into boxes. It's why there's so much animosity surrounding the concept of gender roles. Humanity likes to think that it can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, regardless of anything. We are a species that has traversed the stars, and thus do not like to be told when we cannot reach for them. In my case, that metaphor is a literal one, as for example, because of my height, I cannot become an astronaut. At least in the US. Never. Ever. I'm a quarter of an inch too short, and I'm not growing anymore. Get your short jokes out of the way, please. The reasoning I received had to do with the fact that someone too small would be an inadequate fit for the spacecraft. I had been limited by my own physiology, and initially, even with an explanation, and despite the fact that I never actually wanted to be an astronaut, I was pretty peeved. Calling someone a racist puts that entire person into a box of undesirables, as racism in today's society is a negative trait. To conclude, words are powerful. They have the ability to make or break you. People can either give you glowing recommendations or ruin your life as they tear you down with a few lazily thrown descriptors. I'd like to leave you with a question, and that is, have you ever labeled yourself or been labeled by someone else incorrectly? If so, what was it, and how did it impact your life?